Texas, I'm really disappointed in you. You failed me. What am I talking about, Texas? I'm talking about our cryptids. Our cryptids, they suck. But when you got places like Appalachia and all of the states according to that, you got places like Mexico, you have so many different options for different kinds of monsters. And most of the ones that Texas has are stolen. Now, there's going to be people in the comments that are going to be like, Texas has our own stuff. I'd like to see you give me a list of 10 things that is Texas specific in terms of being a cryptid, because most of our stuff is stolen from other people. Now, the reason I'm saying all that is because of this. This is my first YouTube video on my channel, but we're going to do it starting off with my first series called Cryptids in Texas. Now, to start off this video, we're going to get out the way. My first video is going to be covering the most dumb cryptid that has ever existed in Texas, and that is Hogzilla. Now, before people start coming up in the comments, is it a giant mutant hog that comes out of the lake and breathes fire? No, it is a big hog. It's a big hog. So, no. Out of all these cryptids, you were thinking, oh, Texas, chupacabra. Oh, that'd be cool. Maybe you know something about the black-eyed children. Maybe any of the things that were on the list I showed earlier, you might know some of them, and you might have expected that. In my opinion, the stupidest one is Hogzilla. Now, when I say Hogzilla, what am I referring to? Originally, when people talk about Hogzilla, they're referring to a wild, domesticated hybrid hog that is about 1,000 pounds and 12 feet long. But later it was said to be 800 pounds and 8 feet long. And in reality, whenever there was someone in Texas who said, oh, I shot Hogzilla, it ended up being a lot smaller. A man named Chris Griffin and his son ended up killing what they consider to be Hogzilla with a knife. But this Hogzilla wasn't 1,000 pounds. It was only 460 pounds. Not 1,000 pounds, not 800 pounds. No, it was down to 460 pounds. But the reason they were able to hunt this was because of the owner, Ken Holyak, which I'm probably butchering that, but he gave them permission to hunt. And so, they both get kind of the credit for finding Hogzilla. But again, it's just a hog. Just a hog. For those who don't know what a hog is, it's a pig with tusks. It's very big. And yeah, they're dangerous. They're big. If I saw a wild boar, if I saw a wild feral pig out in the wilderness, I would not be excited about it because, yeah, it's probably going to want to hurt me. But whenever I think of cryptids, I think of something terrifying, not a big pig. Now, I'm not going to get into all the stuff that I'm going to be doing in my future videos because, again, it's just a big pig. But just to tell you how this channel is going to work, I'm going to split all of these cryptids into different sections. I'm going to talk about the local lore. I'm going to talk about what the media has portrayed it to be. I'm going to talk about the science behind it, and then give you my opinion on what I think it is. The big hog doesn't really do much in terms of lore and magic and all of this other stuff that it can do. Instead, I'm just going to tell you that most people in Texas without a scientific degree can tell you pigs get big. Wild pigs get big. If you go out hunting with a dog and you see a wild pig, you might want to be careful because your dog might get unalived. Honestly, it's not really that big a deal. Most people in Texas know that you don't want to mess with wild pigs. If you're hunting them, you're going to need something that's going to bring them down, and you're not going to try to domesticate a big pig. Now, on average, most feral pigs can get anywhere from 75 pounds to 250 pounds, and sometimes they're even bigger than that. And if you went and told me, I saw this huge pig, it must have been like 1,000 pounds. Initially, I would assume that you meant what you believed, especially if you were scared. If you were honestly scared that this thing was going to try to attack you, I wouldn't put it past you to think that it was 1,000 pounds. But honestly, even if you told me that it was 300 pounds, it was 400 pounds, you told me it was 500 pounds, a wild pig out in the wilderness, honestly, I'd believe it. It's not that crazy to think that a pig would get big and would be dangerous, and people need to watch out for it. The original Hogzilla myth actually started in Georgia. So originally I was going to say that this is one of the ones that Texas has, but honestly, we stole it from Georgia, along with many of the other cryptids in here. Now, that is mostly what I have to say about the topic. Unfortunately, I do plan on having my future videos be a lot longer, maybe from like 20 to 30 minutes long. But honestly, for the first entry, for it being, not that big a deal, it's a big pig. That's all it is. It's a big pig. So yeah, we're going to be talking about different things later on in the series. I'm going to be covering things like the chupacabra, which people in Texas know about. I'm going to be covering things like something similar to the chupacabra, like the blue dog. I'm going to be covering things like there's people who claim that they've seen dinosaurs in there. There's also people who talk about something called the black-eyed children. I'm not looking forward to that video, but I want to complete the iceberg. Now, just because something shows up on the iceberg doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to cover it, because there's some of them that aren't going to be like a huge deal. And also, I might cover things that aren't necessarily on the iceberg. I added things into the series that I think are going to be interesting to talk about. And honestly, I'm excited to see where it's going to go. Some of them are ones that I just find interesting that I heard growing up. Sometimes whenever I'd grow up in West Texas, I'm not going to say exactly where in West Texas, but you have a lot of families that come from Hispanic traditions, and whenever you talk to them and talk to their grandparents, you're gonna learn some stuff. There's a lot of cryptids that I had to learn about, and honestly, sometimes it kind of scared me. But I'm going to talk to them about y'all in later videos as well. I'm going to add links to my Patreon, my Instagram, my TikTok, and my Snapchat if you're, interested in me posting things. On those other platforms, I'm thinking about posting my bloopers from the videos that I'm doing. So anything where I'm sitting here messing up and I'm like, oh gosh, what did and I mess up, those are going to be posted onto the other platforms. So if you want to see me not in such a serious focused mode after I do all of the editing, you can see me kind of be a little bit goofy whenever I make some of the bloopers. Texas, like I said, steals from places like Appalachia and like Mexico, and there's other people that talk about these kind of things, but we're not talking about them. We're talking about Texas. We're talking about the cryptids that I'm wanting to talk about right now. Like I said, Texas, I'm extremely disappointed because at all these places having these really cool things, like for example, one of the things in Florida is the skunk ape. That's cool. That's actually kind of cool. It's like Bigfoot, a little bit different. You've got places throughout the country that do talk about actual Bigfoot. You got places that talk about the Watchers, the Black Men in the Hat, the Men in Black. You got a whole bunch of places that talk about different kinds of cryptids. And the first one that I saw whenever I looked at this iceberg was a pig. It was a pig. And I've said this repeatedly. I've repeatedly looked at you in the camera and I've said it is a pig. And I just can't stretch the fact that I think that is retarded. I can't think about how all these people are expecting things like chupacabra or something big, because in Texas, we like to say everything's bigger in Texas. Instead, all we have is just a big pig, and we're saying that that's one of the scariest monsters that you're going to find here. That is retarded, Texas, and I'm disappointed in you for letting that happen. We need to have more cryptids. In fact, we should make up cryptids. There was one time I drove by on one of the highways in the town that I live in, and I saw a man turn in his hoodie, and it looked like he didn't have a face. It looked like just skin. That sounds awesome. We'll call him the Hooded Highwayman. That sounds way better than telling me that there's a big pig out there and that it's a scary monster and we have to call it Hogzilla. No, we need to come up with something better, okay? Like, we have things like brujas out here, and everyone gets so scared about them. They're terrifying because they're scary, but that's, again, stolen from Mexican culture. We need to have something that's specific to Texas that is so much better than a big pig. Anyways, I'm just going on a rant at this point, but like I said, I'm disappointed in Texas. The rest of the videos we'll get in, they do talk about some cool things. There's some of them that talk about things that I also think are stupid, but nothing is going to make me as upset as telling me that a big pig is the scariest thing in Texas. Now that you've sat here and listened to me rant for, however long this video ends up being, I appreciate for all the people who did end up watching it. But I have to say, Texas, be better, do better. And if people want to say in the comments a kind of cryptid that they think would be cool, or one that they want to start, we'll start a rumor. We'll work together. In fact, we'll message other people and say, hey, this is a new cryptid in Texas, and we'll start spreading it so people can quit saying that a big pig is going to be terrifying. But yeah, I guess that's all I have to say, guys.